You fall a lot. I mean, there's a lot of crashes. I crashed way more than I won, and I won a lot of times. You got to be able to crash and brush it off, get up and grind another day. If you wake up one day and you say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, okay, you better sort of prepare yourself, because you may have one or two of the eight that'll be a rocket ship to the moon, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
the others are going to be like a meth lab in the backyard that's going to blow
Oh
up.
my goodness.
For her, that's a 5 to 6 figure payday out the door. Majority of people, they roll out of bed, they throw some clothes on, or take a quick rinse in the shower, throw some clothes on, go down, grab a donut and a cup of coffee, and out the door they go. And it's like, that's not a process.
Yeah,
That's a
right.
that's a train wreck waiting to happen. Today, our brains are basically using 21st century software, right? But it's in a 1,000-year-old operating system.
Meet Gary Miller, owner of Human Charger US and former Olympic ski coach, bringing breakthrough European wellness innovation to the US market. He is leading the distribution of Human Charger, a transcranial bright light therapy device designed to combat seasonal affective disorder, anxiety, depression, fatigue, and jet lag. After building 8 businesses and coaching at the highest level of sport, Gary is now on a mission to help individuals and organizations unlock peak performance through evidence-based light therapy. Gary, welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of The Executive Edge, a podcast where we sit down with leaders, builders, and operators to explore the decisions that shape enduring businesses and meaningful lives. I'm your host, Camille Holmes, and today's guest is Gary Miller, former Olympic ski coach and owner of Human Charger US, a bright light therapy device developed in Finland to address seasonal depression, jet lag, and cognitive fatigue. After starting 8 businesses, some successful, some instructive, Gary is now betting on light as infrastructure in the $2 trillion wellness market. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kamal. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
All right. So with my guests, I always go into the origin story. So you didn't become an Olympic athlete, but you became an Olympic coach. What does standing in the Olympic Village as a coach teach you about high performance that most entrepreneurs misunderstand?
Yeah, that's a good question. Funny, because it was always a dream of mine as a kid to be an Olympic athlete. But through injuries and, quite honestly, even a lack of talent, I wasn't going to get to that level. And at some point, you have to pull the plug, right, and do something else. But that sort of burning dream never really left. And I found that I had a talent to be able to coach athletes. I mean, I had been accomplished enough as an athlete that I could take those skills and turn around and help others. And that just seemed like a better fit to me. And these Olympic team coach positions are really kind of coveted. If you think about it, and you think of a few athletes ever make an Olympic team,
Yeah.
well, cut that in tens, and there's about a tenth of those that are coaches. So I'm actually, it is rarefied air. It's just a different place, right? But I was able to maximize those skills that I had, and I think to a certain degree, Kamal, and this is, I've had to stand back and look at this a little bit, because if you look at the entire sports world and talk about coaching, how many coaches are world champions or Olympic champions or World Cup winners or Super Bowl winners? How many of those are out there? Okay, they're rare.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So my thought on this whole thing is basically, okay, well, I'm down at a lower level and I'm always trying to figure out a way to get to the top. Okay, I become more analytical. I look under every stone that I can find to be able to figure out, how the heck am I going to get up there to be a World Cup champion, right?
Yeah.
So I think versus the guy that's at the top all the time, he or she just needs to stand at the top. And I think they become a little less analytical.
Yeah.
And that's not to degrade them
Right.
as humans, but they're just in a different place. So, for me to be able to develop that skill and be in the right place at the right time, I had to know the right people. And I did a good job when I was asked to come and work with the national team. And eventually it just fell into place. I was very fortunate. I've been super lucky to have multiple Olympic champions, and it was a treat to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Those skills, if I wouldn't have had those skills, I don't think there's any way I could have started businesses. I've started from scratch, literally
Yeah.
zero,
Yeah.
because when athletes grind, but man, behind the scenes, the coaches and the tech reps and people like that, it's merciless. I mean, that hours that we work, brutal.
Yeah.
And that gives us those skills to be able to do that. And I think that transcended into the business world. That
Nice.
was huge for me. I think if I would have gone to college and graduated and then gone into a corporate job, I would have not had the skill set.
Yeah. Right. Right. And to your point of you talk about people being at the summit and staying there, it's you said it's not to say that them doing that is there's nothing wrong with that because it's one thing to get to the top and it's nothing to stay there. Right. But I think another key thing you talked about is like, you know, those guys aren't as analytical, right? So it's like, and that's a pretty common saying you hear a lot in, high performing athletes in that whole world of sports. Those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach do, right? But it's like, it's a relationship that needs to join together, right? Because it's like, you see that you also see this principle a lot in sales, right? Usually, like, um the top closer, right, is probably not the sales manager because the sales manager is the guy teaching people and relationships, and that's a whole nother skill set. But it's just as important, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
extremely important. So I just think that, you know, and us as entrepreneurs, that's a very important thing to understand in terms of like, you know, you have to understand where your strengths are and allocate them in the right places, right? Just like when you're an athlete, you play to your strengths, and when you're a coach, you figure out, okay, what kind of coach am I, right? And you again enhance those things. And it's funny, it's one can't work without the other. One can't work without the other. And it's really cool how some of those same principles in high performing sports definitely translate into entrepreneurship. So yeah, I wanted
No,
to talk about yeah.
you're
Okay,
absolutely correct. Who I should know this name because I'm a big NFL fan. I'm a big football fan. Okay,
okay. Let's
but
test
so
it
the
here.
coach of the Patriots.
Right now,
Yeah.
X,
Oh God.
I should know
Yeah.
too, but I don't either.
Yeah. Okay. He played for the Patriots. He's an anomaly. Okay. He's one
He
of those that
is
was a really great athlete. To see what he's done with the Patriots, I mean, no one would
crazy.
have ever figured they would have been in the Super Bowl at the beginning of the
No,
season,
not even
right?
close. Yeah,
And I think that's pretty impressive. Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. I didn't see it coming. I mean, to be totally honest with you, when Bill Belichick left, oh no, let me go back to Tom Brady. When Tom Brady left, it was pretty clear that he was the team,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yep.
uh, to see how once Belichick left, to see him take over, 100% agree. Like that is not an easy job to do, right? So 100%. Gary, you started a
Oh,
business.
yeah. It's Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel.
Mike
I
Vrabel. Okay,
should have remembered that, but he played for Belichick, and those guys are, boy, to be able to transition into that.
not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. Yep.
That's not easy at all. 100%. You started eight businesses, Gary, and when those didn't work, you were treating failure as a verdict. Oh, sorry. Were you treating failure as a verdict or as information?
Oh no, you treat it as information. I mean, listen, if you wake up one day and you say, "I'm going to be an entrepreneur," okay, you better sort of prepare yourself, because you may have one or two of the eight that'll be a rocket ship to the moon, right? And
Yeah, right.
the others are going to be like a meth lab in the backyard that's going to blow
Oh
up.
my goodness.
It's
Seriously.
just it's a really, like I said, if I wouldn't have been a coach, I think it would have been a harder transition for me to do that. There were a couple that just didn't pan out. That analogy back to sports again. As a ski racer, it's a tough sport. I mean, and you fall a lot. I mean, there's a lot of crashes. I crashed way more than I won, and I won a lot of times. Okay, you got to be able to crash and brush it off and get up and grind another day. You just have to have that mindset. And in the business world, there are going to be those days where you've worked, you've put in a 14, 16-hour day, and you did that 7 days a week, or you did it for an entire month, and you're spent completely, but you got to keep doing it.
Gotta keep doing
And you get a setback, you got to keep doing it. So, and then I think the one advantage that athletes have that I would, and I actually should do an article on this, but the one thing that athletes have is that they have some of the basics. They know how to take care of their body. They know how to get enough sleep. They know how to get enough nutrition. They continue to train. Even at my old age now, I still work out almost every day.
Yeah.
And it's, you have these things that you do, and that allows you to continue that grind. You don't have that, it's really tough, because your health will suffer, your family will suffer. And of course, entrepreneurs don't always do it right. I remember when our two kids were really young, like 3 and 1, and my wife is like, "You're never home. You're at the office all the time." And she looked at me and she says, "We're doing well enough now where we hire somebody, because I need some help." And that was an awakening for me, and I did, and that made a world of difference. And of course, I was a lot happier because I could spend some time with my wife and my kids, and it was taking a load off. Yeah.
Yeah. No, to your point about whole idea of you fall more times than you stand up. Or for myself, I train martial arts, right? And there's a saying in my gym, right? Every time I walk in, there's this big bold letters that say a black belt is just a white belt that never gave up, right? And again, making that correlation to the business world and sports, most of the time there's more data that supports that your willingness to keep going makes you successful versus any type of intellectual capacity or any of those other things that people think drive success. It's most of the time your ability to just keep going. And that's where usually most people fail. Where when it does get tough, like you said, this 15-hour day, 16-hour, all those different things, you do it over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter if you're tired, you still do it. All right. Those are the things that I think athletes come into the door with as an advantage because, like you said, taking care of your body is, you get used to it. It becomes a routine. That doesn't make it any more easier. You just become conditioned to do it. Right.
Right.
So the same thing applies to business. It's like it never really gets easier. You have just conditioned yourself to this being your new normal. Right. So I think for our audience here, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, just remember that it really is just a matter of you, how bad do you want it, and are you willing to give everything you have? Is it,
Yeah, there's a lot of facets to it, and keeping yourself healthy is one side of it,
it's
right?
yeah, yeah, one side, yeah.
The other side of it is you have to develop a process. It's like athletes do. You have to have a process, and that begins from when you wake up in the morning to, the finite details. How you brush your teeth, not just brushing your teeth. It's how do you make your bed in the morning? Do you put your clothes on a certain way? Do you eat a certain thing before you walk out the door? I can tell you the majority of people They roll out of bed, they throw some clothes on, or take a quick rinse in the shower, put some clothes on, go down, grab a donut and a cup of coffee, and out the door they go. And it's like, that's not a process.
Yeah, right.
That's a train wreck waiting to happen. You have to, anything, whether it's sports or business, it's all on performance. You have to use every tool that you possibly can to keep your performance level high, which helps your mental state as well. But it's everything. Everything has to flow together, and it's a little militaristic, right? But it has to be that way. It just has to be that way. Otherwise, you can't make it work.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Gary, I wanted to transition to some of your first clients, right? When you discovered Human Charger in Europe, what made you think this is the next company?
This came out of the blue, Kamal. I'm telling you, I still kind of shake my head a little bit. My wife and I were on a ski trip to Austria, and a former business colleague of mine, we met, and he had a friend of his with him that owned this product called the Human Charger. And we skied a few runs, and then we went and went to a restaurant and had a pizza and a couple big old mugs of beer. And he showed us this Human Charger. And of course, he starts talking about SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, which is winter depression, right? And I didn't know anything about it. And I should, as a coach in a winter sport. I should have known this, but I had no clue. And my wife knew about it, though, because she does suffer from some anxiety and some panic disorder and things like that. And but the science was pretty intriguing. And one thing led to another, and he gave us some samples, and we said we'd try it for a week and see what happens. And then it just so happened that friends of ours, a wellness doctor and his wife from Denver, were over skiing at the same time. So we met over at their hotel, and I looked at him, as a wellness doctor, and I said, "Hey, have you ever seen anything like this?" And he goes, "No," because it had never been in the U.S. It was developed in Finland as a company that was an offshoot of Nokia, the phone company, and which is weird enough the way it is, right? But they were getting their booty kicked by Apple because everyone had a Nokia phone at one point, and then all of a sudden Apple came out, and here they've got this crazy new iPhone. And I think there was a scientist and an engineer at Nokia that said, let's go off and do something else. And they knew that Finland was, in a north latitude that had a lot of people that suffered from SAD. So they developed this. They found that light, which normally would be delivered through what they call an SAD lamp, a SAD lamp, is what they call them. You stare at this thing for an hour, right? And that's because the light would go through your optic nerve and, hit the photosensitive regions of the brain that deliver your hormones. And they thought there would be a better way. So they found that light will actually penetrate not only the skull, but it's really much faster through the ear canal because your eardrum is translucent. The bone structure around the ear is real thin. So they found that bright light, the same amount of bright light that you'd stare at for an hour, could be delivered transcranially through your ears in about 12 minutes. And they started doing experiments they went to the Finnish pro hockey teams and found that their reaction time sped up because they're in low light conditions. And I thought, that's interesting because, in the ski racing world, we don't always have great sunny days. A lot of them are cloudy and snowy, and you don't get enough light. So, if you walk outside and it's a bright sunny day, your mood's good, you're feeling good energy. But man, you walk out when it's dark and cold and damp and, you're kind of a little bit depressed. And I'm thinking, well, maybe there's something to this that could help athletes. So we did have a couple samples. So we gave a sample to the doctor and his wife because they were flying back to Denver in a couple days. And he calls me in a week and he goes, "Oh my God." He said, "I've never seen anything like this." He said, "We never had any jet lag." I said, "Wow, okay." Positive. And he says, "We have good energy. We use it every morning." But he said, "We used it multiple times when we got home, and we did that for 2 days, and we had no jet lag. That's the first time that's ever happened. So I went back to the company and I said, "What about this jet lag thing?" "Well, yeah, we have some customers that use it for that, but we don't, we haven't really promoted it much." And so I did some experiments with my winter athletes, and we came to the same conclusion. Then we started with some coaches, and then it was business travelers. And pretty soon, we have a couple hundred people out there that are using the human charger for travel because they don't get any jet lag anymore. And jet lag, let me tell you something. Jet lag is brutal, and especially with athletes. So I'll give you a quick story. So we were training I was with the women's national team training in Copper Mountain, Colorado in November. The first World Cup race of the year is in Levi, Finland, which is right at the Arctic Circle. And the head coach, okay, I was an assistant coach, the head coach, who was Austrian, said, "We're going to leave 2 days before the event." And I looked at him and I said, "You're crazy." I said, "Everyone's going to have jet lag and we're going to feel good, and especially the athletes." "No, but with the training's too good in Colorado, no, we have to go." And I got into this argument, but he's the head coach, so he made the call. Well, our star athlete, Michaela Schifrin, who just won the gold medal in Cortina in the slalom, okay, her father wasn't real happy about it either, but the arrangements were made, so we flew from Denver to Boston. This is late November. Of course, we ran into weather issues. Then we finally got to Helsinki, and then you got to fly up to Levi. And, Levi in the end of November, which is a month away from the winter solstice, the sun comes up about 10, and it goes down about 2. So it's dark a lot. And we arrived the night before the event. I think she got 7th or 8th in the slalom. It was the worst result she's ever had there. And everyone was trashed. I mean, jet lagged, we were tired, and having this device, obviously we would have left 2 days earlier than that, but that gives you the 2 days you need to get the bright light, to move your circadian rhythm forward to adapt to the, yeah, it's nice. Well, and Kamal, an athlete at that level, for her, that's a 5 to 6 figure payday out the door. So that hurts. That's a stinger. So you got, this is why it's paying attention to the little details is so critical. And if it can be done with light therapy in a way this device is compact. I mean, it's small. It's just a little headset. It plugs in, and you put the button, and it lights up for 12 minutes, and then it's off. You throw it back into your briefcase, your knapsack, your purse, whatever it is, and you walk away. And it's about as easy as it gets. And these types of things have a huge impact on performance. And it isn't just athletes. Think of the C-suite guys that have to fly from New York to London, and they've got to jump into a board meeting the next day. If you knew the numbers of lost productivity from jet lag, staggering. It's in the tens of millions. Yeah, no, it's nuts, man. And we just we couldn't believe, because after I've been fortunate, I've traveled all over the world, and it doesn't matter which way you go, you're going to suffer jet lag. And the easiest way that I can frame this is that today our brains are basically using 21st century software, right? But it's in a 1,000-year-old operating system. Okay, our bodies, and we just haven't. Jet travel came along, and it was pretty quick. It would take us 1,000 years for us to be able to adapt to that. Eventually, all species evolve and get better in time. This isn't going to. That's not a fast, So, and of course, people, just the average Joe, just the average person, they get that dream trip to Europe. They want to go to Italy for a trip in the summer, and they're gone for a week. Why do you want to suffer for 3 days with jet lag when then you got 4 days left, right? No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'll send you a study, because you'll blow your mind. We have I reached out to a guy in Vancouver who has a company called Camber Aviation. He makes private jets for people. Okay, he literally buys the fuselage from Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier, and it looks like a green tube, right? Wings, tube. And then what he does is whatever the client wants, he does the avionics, he does the engines, and he does the interiors. And he specs it all out, builds it out for him. And so he's flying all over the world. And I had reached out, and it was basically a cold call. And then his project manager, she was great. She's like, I think Tom might like this. So about a month later, we got a phone call set up, and I explained it, and he says, "Well, send me one. I'll try it out. I'm anything to help with jet lag," because he's going all over the world all the time, and he did. And about a month later, he calls and says, "That's the real deal." He said, "I can't believe because I fly from one place to another." He was going Vancouver to Munich to Vienna, then back to Munich, then to London, then to Montreal, and then to Vancouver, and then he had to go to Singapore. And he said, it never missed a beat. He said, it saved my life. Just crazy. Now, and you can go, and it's across the board. And I don't want this to sound like this is some miracle device, right? But there are certain sectors, okay, and every human is different. We all react to things differently. But night shift workers are susceptible to a lot of different illnesses and maladies just because your biological clock, your circadian rhythm, just isn't designed to work at night, right? So until you acclimate, which could be a week, then you're back home again and for the weekend, and you can get sick a lot. And so now we have some night traders, guys that go into the office at 9 o'clock at night, and they work the night. They do night trading on the markets till 5 in the morning, and they know it's not healthy for them. And I got a guy that he works for a finance firm out in L.A., and he ordered one for his CEO because he was going to Taiwan for Christmas. And he came back and he says, "Oh my God, this thing is great. It's fantastic." So the guy that arranged the human charger wrote me back and said, "Hey, I'm going to Manila. I need one." So he bought one, and we got it to him right away. And he said, "I'm working in Manila." He does this 9 to 5 routine. He's a night trader or doing something in the night shift. And he said it's phenomenal. It's about a year and a half. It's kind of a combination. We get some referrals from athletes and corporate people, direct outreach. We're doing some of that. Now we're starting to get into AI a bit to help reach even deeper. And we are actually going to use TikTok. TikTok actually is a better platform than, we are listed on Amazon, but Amazon is so full of products now, it has a tendency to be lost a little bit. But TikTok is driven by influencers, and we started out with a website, and then we used some social media, but now social media is so crowded with stuff, and most of it's kind of ham-boned, and there's a lot of AI stuff that's starting to pop up, and people are just like, I don't want to see that stuff. So when you have an influencer who's on commission, they make their money by selling products. So they'll do the videos and they'll talk about the product, and then it's all coded where someone places an order, they get a little discount, and the influencer gets a spiff on it as well. And at the end of the day, everyone's happy. So we've had to pivot a little bit with that. And of course, we're doing more corporate outreach too, because the C-suite executives, the people are traveling a lot, need this product. And if you've got a company of a couple hundred people and they're chained to their desks under poor lighting, the healthcare costs that companies have to endure today, if you can keep your employees a lot healthier, your costs will go down. And I think, and it's difficult, Kamal, because in the U.S., it's such a pill-popping society, right? You figure you can take a medication to fix something, and it just, you don't need that. You don't need that. You just need light. You just need light, And of course, the worst thing is the blue light. It's yeah, yeah. Because and look at, so one of the initiatives that we're working on is we're working with another company that has a similar product in the fact that it works with DNA expression, which is a deep topic, and maybe someday we can get into that. But he's out of Denver. It's a product called the Jazz Band, and it's used to help people that have had surgery or have a sprain or torn tissues or whatever. And this, he's figured out with low level red and infrared light plus magnetics and vibration that they can speed up the body's natural DNA to repair it quickly. Never seen a product like this before. It's in the light space. It's just the opposite side of ours. Ours is cognitive because it's bright light for your brain. This is for any other place on the body, and we've seen amazing things with it. But I think by having some of these devices that don't require you to take, people get injured, and the first thing they do is they live on ibuprofen, which is not what you want to do. You just don't. So you want something natural. Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, nobody's ever seen this thing. So we do some of this compare and contrast, right? You have a choice now, because even though it's the only product of its kind in the world, okay, and there's lots of SAD lamps, lots of SAD lamps out there, right? So you can make a choice, and the simple explanation is light really does have an impact on you physically, okay? So do you want to sit and stare at a SAD lamp for an hour? Or do you want to be able to just move about your day, wake up in the morning, throw your human charger on, 12 minutes, it's done, throw it in your purse, take it to work with you, and you're done. You know what life is like today. It's not like it was when we were little kids, when things were, everything was a little slower, right? Today, full gas every day. So you don't have time to sit in front of a lamp and stare at it. Plus, it's not all that enjoyable, to tell you the truth. we had to try it a few times because it's no fun. But this thing, I mean, it's quick and easy, and in probably anywhere, depending upon the person, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, you'll notice a difference. You'll notice a difference. So we have to use the compare and contrast a little bit, because people don't know about it. It's pretty easy to walk to the medicine cabinet and grab some ibuprofens and throw them down, right? Whoops. I've been on this podcast.
To go through the weekend on this medicine. Cream for my eyes. In the morning, prednisone.
Why? This guy,
I'm back, Gary. Can you hear me?
Hey, you
I
there?
don't know what happened. I'm here. It just cut out.
Yeah, just. Oh, now I got it. Now I have an echo. What the heck? And there was another window that opened up. I got to get out of this. What the heck?
You have to. I mean, we'll edit the abruption. And
There-
can reconnect.
I know what happens is that and then all of a sudden it opened up another window. That's why I was getting the echo. So that's weird. And we're back to normal now. Good. Sorry. I don't know what happened.
I apologize for the abruption.
No, we were in a pretty good flow there for a while. I like it. It's storytelling, which is always fun. You disappeared again. There you are. You're back again.
Jeez, I don't know what's going on here today. Riverside has not been cooperative. All right, it's all right.
Listen. I've had some issues with Riverside at times too, so no worries. Happen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all good though. I'm glad we're back at it. We'll get this
We're back
sorted
at it.
out. It's not even that big of a deal. So
Good.
okay. So Gary, if you had to double revenue without doubling your workload, which lever would you pull? Partnerships, affiliates, retail distribution, or creator-led education?
Wow. That's a tough one. Double revenues. I think. Well, there's a couple different ways, really. Like I said, we're going to go this TikTok route, right? So basically, they're influencers, affiliates, and I think with the right ones, they have to have a lot of followers. You got to have some cream of the crop. If you can do that, that could scale pretty quickly. It's a robust system that they've developed. Their TikTok shop is it's not easy to get in there and not easy to do business with on that platform to get set up anyway. They're very discriminating, but I think that would be one. The other one is partnerships. I talked to a guy the other day who he was a finance guy out of New York. Did that for a long time, got burned out, decided to check out. So he and his wife and their I don't know if their daughter was born there or not, but the young daughter, they went to Bali, of all places, and just said, "We're checking out, man. We're leaving." But he had all these connections, and he sort of went, Island Paradise is great, but now I got to do some things. So we had this conversation. He came referred to me through another contact of mine, and he says, "Now I go around helping people get things set up and with businesses and such and so forth, and you're an ideal candidate." So he refers me to it was like 4 different individuals, some in the fitness industry, some in the upscale transportation business. I shouldn't say transportation, vacation business. These guys could push some pretty serious numbers. So that's just another way to
Right.
do it.
Right.
I think the bottom line is, as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of reinvent yourself more often than you maybe want, and you've got to look under a lot of different stones. I mean, that's really key, because especially today, like I talked about with the light, for jet lag and things like that, things are evolving so quickly in the tech world that you have to be willing to look at some different things. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to build this widget, or I have this idea and I'm going to go do this thing. And you've got to look at a lot of different avenues. And we're going down the path that I never would have thought of a year and a half ago. Completely different.
Okay.
But it evolves over time, and it's product dependent or service dependent. I think one of the categories today that it's a bit of a tough one is there are a lot of people that want to be a coach, right? They want to be a life coach, or they want to be a executive coach and stuff like that. And which I think is great, but you got to have some experience behind you. You got to have a knowledge base, be able to figure a way to, and the connections to tap into it. I'm very thankful that I was able to do some of the things in the sports world that I was able to do, and actually even in the business world where I've made enough connections where you can tap into that. I think it's, especially as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of unknowns.
When you talk about bottlenecks you may go through, Gary, you said the biggest challenge that people don't understand it. So what's the real bottleneck? Is it awareness, education, distribution?
Me, I think, distribution is pretty easy. Okay. And I was lucky because in between my ski careers, I was designing and manufacturing sports bags and luggage for a lot of different people in the sports industry. And I got into it through a friend of mine, and he had a company, and he was building all of the sports bags and luggage for Eddie Bauer and LL Bean. And it was a big business, and he had nobody in the smaller categories, the smaller companies. So, of course, knowing the ski world, I was able to transition and do that. So instead of flying to Europe all the time, I was going to Asia because I was having to deal with the factories and the logistics, getting it shipped to the States, getting it through customs, and delivering it to the customer. So I learned some of these things and had some great connections over there. So the distribution side of it for me was really easy. You found a warehouse and they were perfect for our fulfillment, which is great. Website development's relatively easy. We had a web gal that could do our website. One critical mistake, we did not do a .com because the mother company, humancharger.com, is in Europe already. So we choose humancharger.us. Found that was a big mistake because 95% of people go to a .com.
Yeah, I do know
Right?
that. Yes.
So
Yes.
so we've had to pivot a bit on that and make some changes with that. And I think, I think it's just, I think some of the bigger challenges now, I would say one of our biggest challenges right now is AI. Okay. Everyone wants to kind of jump on the AI bandwagon. Now, the good side of AI is now I've had a year with it and I've really learned how to use it and how to prompt it. That's key. That's really
Mhm.
key. It can't be, I started out as a Chat GPT user and then upgraded to the Plus version, which was like night and day. So
Yeah, it is. It is.
everyday stuff you can get by with a freebie. You want to go deep. Now with their web version, the Atlas, there isn't a free version to that, and that's a paid one too. We
Hmm.
don't need that yet, but this tools like this now you have to learn how to use that tool. You can't ignore it, and
Oh,
it's here to stay. And
yes.
honestly, Kamal, I don't know where. I told my wife again today, I don't know what I would do without it because it
Mhm.
can literally do anything that an assistant you would be paying for. And I know there's a lot of debate out there. Is it's going to take everybody's jobs away?
Yeah.
It's going to take some jobs, okay?
Right.
But I remember back in, what is it, 1990, when the computer came
Mhm.
out and the internet
Yeah.
was developed, the World Wide Web, as they called it,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
WWW.
Right.
Well, oh, that's going to take so many jobs. Well, sure, it did take some jobs,
Yeah.
but it didn't take
Yeah.
all the jobs.
Right. Yes.
I think AI, it's not going to take all the jobs, but you learn to use AI to your advantage. I think for the small business owner, it can be really good.
100%. 100%. We've gotten to a point now where if you're not using it, you're at a competitive disadvantage. And on the topic of if you don't, it's going to take jobs yes, this is true to some extent, right? So if you look at anything that involves any sort of execution, right? Like data entry, for example, yeah, sure, you may have some issues here. But anything that involves a human touch, and like a simple example is if you're a lawyer, you can probably use AI for all the administrative tasks, but AI can't sit in the courtroom and lobby for your behalf, right? That's impossible, right? So the question becomes, okay, is it if it's taking jobs, then you need to be on the side of where, okay, how can I leverage it instead of, and I think that's when you talk about the argument, people are arguing about the wrong thing. They're asking the wrong questions. It's going to take jobs, sure, but what are you doing to put yourself on the plus side of that movement, right? So, and I think for us as entrepreneurs, it's like the sooner you can get on that side of it, the better off you'll be. And you never know. You may be able to create more jobs and especially if you look at the United States rewards entrepreneurs because we create jobs for the economy, right? So it's like it's
Yep.
of how you look at the I think part of our job as entrepreneurs is to educate the public is like, hey, well, don't look at it this way. There's different ways to skin a cat. And AI just gives you like a plethora of those different ways to do it, right? Um, but yeah, Gary, you talked a little bit about the future, and wellness is growing rapidly. What does success look like for Human Charge US in the next 12 to 24 months, right? Is it retail placement, corporate wellness, affiliate growth, or D2C sales, DTC sales?
It's for sure, and I'll tell you why. Because you alluded to it earlier. It's the education side of it, right? When we were setting up our warehouse in Florida, the warehouser had said, I want you to talk to a buddy of mine. He's got a business where your product might fit really well with because he owns a lot of pharmacies and he owns some of these places where it might be a good fit. And we started looking at it and obviously running the numbers and you know part of the problem is that the product that nobody has ever seen before, you have to be able to, they're going to look at it and say they walked in and they saw the human charger, you'd have to have a display, okay, so that people could actually see it, touch it, maybe push the button and see the lights go on or whatever, okay, and then you'd have to completely change the packaging so it was shrink wrapped and it's got to be in a place where it's not going to get nicked by somebody thinking they can throw it in their purse and walk out the door. And we just looked at it, the numbers, and went, not going to work. And it's going to know what it's about. If you want to go the retail route, you better have some big bucks behind you to be able to do the advertising to back it. And quite with a product that retails, $179, it just isn't you do that.
Right.
So we're direct to consumer because it is a touch it and feel it to a certain degree, and we have a 60-day money back. If you try it and you don't like it, send it back, and
Right.
you hardly get anything back because people do use it
Right.
and like it.
Yes.
But I think with the direct consumer is really the only way to scale it up with a product like this.
Okay. Amazing. Gary, this has been great. Before we wrap up, where should people go if they want to learn more about you and about Human Charger and want to connect with you?
Well, we are our website, and it is humancharger.us right now, but it will be humanchargerusa.com, and that's in this week. We're going to change that, so it's humanchargerusa.com. That's where they'll go, and they can get all the information there. That's and obviously they can send an email but there's lots of information on it's a very, very simple device, and it'll have huge impact on people's, and that's one of the things that's really attractive to it. We can help people that are struggling with what they call CRD, circadian rhythm disruption, and that's and you know what? There's why our kids today, our youth, from college on down, using their phones all the time, are suffering from depression. Over 80% of our youth are suffering from depression, and that can help that.
Okay. Gary, thank you again. I really appreciate the clarity and perspective you brought to this conversation. For those listening, you heard where to find them. This has been another episode of The Executive Edge. I'm your host, Kamel Holmes. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Kamal.